This is Renz of Wildlife Religion, Coach Renz, and today we're going to talk about polygamy. And not polyamory, but polygamy. There is a difference. Polyamory is when you have a husband, you have a wife, and one or both of them have a girlfriend or a boyfriend who lives outside of the home. The primary purpose for the person outside of the home is maybe to have some level of a relationship, emotional relationship, but for the most part, it's for them to have a sexual relationship. Whereas polygamy is when you have another husband or another wife in the home with you. 3, 4, 5, 6 people, however number of people it is. It's not up to me to decide. It's not up to you to decide for other people. But polygamy is when you're building a household, a family together in the same house. So there's a very distinct difference. I'm only concerned with polygamy, not so much polyamory. But to each his own. But one of the things that many people, a couple of days ago here in the lounge, we had a discussion concerning polygamy and its implications of what it means, how it affects people, that sort of thing. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it right? Is it wrong? It's only right or wrong based on what you think. Now, one person brought up the fact that, well, according to the Word of God, that it's wrong. And we had a good wholesome debate about it without anger, a private debate, not one that encompassed the entire lounge, because we don't do that in the lounge. We keep those discussions private, or we take them outside, or we don't have them at all if it's going to interfere with anybody else's sensibility, because the lounge is a place of peace where anybody can have a conversation. But if it's something that's going to make people upset, angry, or feel disrespected, we don't have those conversations. Which is why politics, not sex, we talk about sex here a lot, but politics and religion and gender are generally not discussed in a cigar lounge. But we had a small conversation with the right people in here. We can have that conversation, and I kind of manage whether or not we have them. But to continue anyway, let's talk about polygamy. Is it right or wrong according to the Bible, according to the Christian Bible? Now, there are a couple of different parts of this that you have to understand, and at the end of the day, I'm gonna go ahead and give you the answer. It's all based on culture, and it's all based on governmental control as to whether or not polygamy is right or wrong in the Bible. You see, when you look at your Bible, especially in your Old Testament first, polygamy was very well accepted. Polygamy was a part of life. It was known. It was cool. It was okay. When you look at it, you have Esau with multiple wives. You had a dude in Genesis, I forgot his goddamn name. He had multiple wives. Abraham had a slave wife, Hagar. Jacob had 2 regular wives, Leah and what the heck is her name? Leah and Rachel. And then he had 2 slave wives. And then in Samuel, you have Elkanah had wives. David had multiple wives. Solomon, we know he had 300 wives, supposedly 300 wives and 700 concubines. Having multiple wives, according to the Jewish people, was okay. It was fine. Now, many Christians, they will say that you're not supposed to have multiple wives. Why do they say this? Well, first they try to take a part that Paul said. There's 2 parts that Paul said. One, no, let's go back further. Let's start with Genesis. One thing that they say is that in Genesis, that God made Adam and Eve and told them that the 2 shall become one flesh, and for this cause a man shall leave his mother and father, and the 2 shall become one flesh. Well, people who are pro-polygamous say that, well, it is not that only those 2 can become one flesh, but if you have multiple wives, you should become one flesh, which is what you should do. If you're going to engage in polygamy, you cannot have it where this is your primary wife and you 2 are one flesh, and then this is your secondary, 3rd wife, 4th wife, and you cannot become one flesh, as if there's a hierarchy. When you implement a hierarchy into polygamy, then you are dooming that polygamous relationship, because you will cause jealousies and anger and frustration, because you are not providing as the center point, whether you are the male or the female. You're not providing for each person emotionally and structurally, and giving them that security within the relationship. You are failing, and we're going to get more into that later. But you all should become one flesh. The sister wives should become one flesh. Not sexually. They don't have to become that sexually, but if they so choose, that's their business. But you don't. That is why they call sister wives. If there's a young lady I know, she has 2 husbands. The 2 men have to become brother husbands within the relationship. You cannot have a separation. All become one flesh because you're all one family. You're all one unit. But when we look at that, the Christians will use that to say, no, one flesh, a husband and a wife. Well, who, if you believe in your Bible, then who else would Adam have married? But until more and more people were on the planet, then you have later on where another gentleman, forgot his name, he has multiple wives. He takes on 2 wives. And there's nothing, the Bible doesn't condemn him for it at all. And throughout the Old Testament, more wives are taken. Multiple wives are taken. Now, we're going to get into being able to provide for those wives, but there is a clear understanding of that as well. Now, the other things that Christians like to use to say that you should only have one wife is because Paul in Corinthians, I think it's 1 Corinthians, says that, you know, he said, but first he said, and this is the part they skip. At first he says, a man should not have sex with a woman, period, because that makes you husband and wife. He's saying that you should abstain from becoming husband and wife. The reason why he's saying this is because Paul thought that Jesus would return in that time, in his lifetime. And if he's going to return in this lifetime, then it is better for you to focus only on God than to have to be able to focus on a wife or a husband. But if you are burning with the lust and desire, then a man should take upon a wife, and each husband should have one wife, and each wife should have one husband. But that was only because he thought that the world was coming to an end in his lifetime. It wasn't because he was saying something about polygamy. He was saying you should take on a wife. But if you're only if you're burning with that lust, you should take on a wife. If you're not burning with it, don't take on a wife, don't take on a husband, but remain a virgin so that you are ready to become a bridesmaid of Jesus. That's what he was teaching. He wasn't talking about polygamy, right? Now, there's another part in 1 Timothy and Titus where he says that church leaders should only have one wife, that pastors and deacons should only have one wife. If you are not a church leader, you can have multiple wives. But if you're a church leader, you should only have one wife. This is what he was writing about in Titus and 1 Timothy. He wasn't speaking to the people at large. Now, why else would Paul be talking about only having one wife? Because at the time frame of Paul, who was in charge? The Romans. And the Romans were a monogamy civilization. Although they had sex with their slaves, although they had orgies, although they had all these other things that people may call sexual deviancies, the Romans believed in only having one wife. And one of the problems that, and see, we'll talk about the problems that they had with the Jewish people, because the Romans were in control of Judea at this time. The problem that they were having with the Jewish people was that the Romans forced them to have a statue of Caesar in their temple, in their synagogue. Yes, that was a big issue. But the other issue was the fact that the Romans were saying, like Tertullian wrote, that the Jewish people, you can only have one wife, that it is not lawful. Other people, I think it's Caesar, Eusebius of Caesarea also wrote that one wife is legal while having 2 wives is illegal according to Roman law. So the culture of Jewish people, of Christians, were growing up in Roman law, just as you have grown up in the culture of your European society that you currently live in. Most of us currently live in, whether it's in America or Europe or South America, Central America, most of Africa, Asia. We have grown up in this Eurocentric mindset of the world, which is born out of the Roman mindset, which says only one wife is legal. It is not based on religion. It is based on government control, because the Romans had this as a part of their government prior to them dominating and taking over Judaism and creating Christianity through the writings of Josephus. So, where does that leave us? Truly, if you are a Christian, that leaves you conflicted. The larger portion of your Bible says it's okay to have multiple wives. The larger portion of your Bible does not deem it a sin. It is very significant things, being a church leader or thinking that God is coming back before you die and you just can't help but to have the burning of wanting to have sex, that you should only have one wife. But if you don't have that burning desire, you can have more than one wife. If you don't believe that Jesus is coming back right now, you should be able to have one wife. By law, it is because we fall upon the Roman laws that we have the idea that you should only have one wife because of Roman law. So I personally don't have a problem with polygamy. As a matter of fact, I will probably, more than likely, definitely be a polygamist myself. As a single man right now, I know I'm going to be a polygamist. And I don't care what people think. Not for them to think. But let's continue with the discussion that we was having in here. Because there was one woman who was against it. There was other women who were like, I'm against it, but it's cool for other people. Another woman was like, she's all for it. Doesn't have to have it, has to have it. But one gentleman was saying that it is that man's responsibility to provide for all the wives. And I disagree with that. 100%. 100%. Because let's look at any ancient culture. Any time frame where polygamy was abound. Did the man go out and farm all the land himself? Because they were agrarians for the most part. Did he go out and farm all the land himself? Or did his wives participate? Did he take care of all the animals himself? Or did the wives participate? Was the husband's duties pertaining to everything that brought wealth to the family? Or did the wives participate? Did they make linen? Did they make clothing? Did they help with the crops in order for those to be sold and traded? Did they help with the animals so that they can be slaughtered? Were they out in the fields as shepherds? Some, yes, most not. But were they participating in the slaughtering and the curing of the meats and all that sort of things in order for it to be sold and traded and bartered? Did they participate in the wealth bringing of the family? They most certainly did. Every last one of them did. In a polygamous relationship, in any family relationship, the wives also participated in the building of the wealth of the household. So it is not for the man to have to provide. That is the European mindset in order to force the idea of polygamy being against you. As a matter of fact, when Theodosius really pushed polygamy not being a part of Christianity, not being a part of the Roman Empire, and he outlawed it, is that not the same way that America did to the Mormons? America, when Utah wanted to become a state, you go look it up, the United States government at that time told them they had to change their religion to outlaw polygamy, because prior to that, polygamy was okay with the Mormons. But after they wanted to become a state, polygamy was then outlawed in Mormon teachings, even though some sects still have it. The Jewish people finally outlawed polygamy, but some Jewish sects still kept it. History continues to repeat itself. It does. Whatever the government says your religion should be is what the people will change their religion to be. It's as simple as that. The Mormons used to teach that black people cannot go to heaven unless they were slaves to the white people in heaven. Until Jimmy Carter forced them to change that by taking away their 501c3 if they didn't do it. That is when the Mormons start letting black people become pastors and whatnot in the Mormon church. Stop teaching that they would only be slaves in heaven to Mormon couples who have reached this higher plane of existence and they can go off and start their own world. So we know that religions will change based on the government, and polygamy is one of those things. But never is it that the one person. You see, polygamy is more than just about sex. The immature mind will see it as a thing of sex, but the mature mind sees polygamy as something that is to build an empire together, to build family structures, to give the sister wives those things that a man cannot provide for them. I consider myself to be very balanced in my masculine and feminine energy, but there are certain emotional connections that I would never be able to have with a woman, that I would never fully be able to understand. This is where the benefit of a sister wife comes into play. There are arguments that me and one wife may not ever be able to come to an agreement on, that we will continue to argue about. But that outside looking in of the sister wife is beneficial to that. But what makes that even better? Because some will say, well, that's why she has girlfriends. Let's be real. If a woman goes to her girlfriend to tell her about her issues, that woman is giving her advice based on the relationship that she had with her husband or her boyfriends or her experience with those other men. She's outside. How much better will it be for that third woman to have been sitting there, saw everything that happened, and be able to give advice only based on what she saw happen in the relationship. A true third person who witnessed what happened. Not pushing towards one side or the other because she's emotionally involved to the extent that it happened to her, but she's emotionally involved into the extent of seeing the peace in the household. True, some will say that she could be jealous and want to gain favor with the husband at that point by siding with the husband. But if she has the maturity to be in a polygamous relationship, she should be looking at it as saying that, how do we find peace so that our entire family structure remains happy, so that we continue to grow emotionally, spiritually, and financially together, so that we can have this union to continue to blossom. A mature-minded woman would see it that way. In the same way, if the two wives got into an argument, the husband standing on the outside sees exactly what happened. Who said what? Not based on his opinion, but what actually happened. But see, if he was on the outside, he's only giving advice based on what he's experienced in his life with his wife. If he's mad with his wife and he's trying to give the other guy advice, or trying to give the women advice, but he's mad at his own wife because she did something similar, he's invoking his experience, his emotions into that situation. It is far better that if it's all kept in the house. Don't we say that all the time? That we don't put our business out in the street? It's better for all the business to be handled in the house. The only way that that can happen is the house has to be managed correctly. You see, when you have an idea that this wife is the primary wife, as they do in Saudi Arabia, this is wife number 1, and then this is wife number 2, 3, 4, 5. When I used to think about polygamy, I learned it from being over in Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and Dubai, Jebel Ali and Dubai and all of that back in the early 90s. And I saw that structure. And I thought, oh, okay, that's cool. But as I've gotten older and I start to realize the immaturity of it all, you cannot make the second wife, third wife, fourth wife subjective to the other wives. They all must be standing on equal plane. And it is for that man to take that responsibility. That is his primary job, is to manage that. If one wife loves taking nature walks and the other wife loves getting flowers, then take nature walks with this wife, give flowers to that wife. Over time, the one who didn't like nature walks may want to start taking nature walks because she starts to see the value in it. So now you take nature walks with her too. Over time, the one that didn't like flowers may start to like flowers, so now you give her flowers as well. You have to always maintain a level of balance so that each wife feels just as important. Each wife should feel like number one wife. And the way you do that is by making sure each wife's needs are being met as much as your ability can do so. That each one is able to go out and explore themselves, to be able to grow within themselves, to obtain whatever they desire to obtain within life, to be able to date each one to the level that they desire to be dated. In short form, to love them as they desire to be loved and how they receive love. That is your job. Is that not your job in a regular relationship, in a monogamous relationship? And I call that regular, because that normalizes only that type of relationship. But all types of marriages should be normalized. All types, except for bestiality and the marriage of minors. But any other type, same sex, multiple wives, monogamous, doesn't matter. Love is not something that you hold for one person. I love all 3 of my children. But I know what makes Sydney feel love. I know what makes Simone feel love. I know what makes Lincoln feel love. He's a little bit more difficult to figure him out, but I know what makes that little boy, I know for the most part what makes him feel loved. And most of the time it's leaving him alone, not trying to push his life in one direction, but just being there to support him and enjoying the things that he enjoys, which is why I had to start watching anime. But if I want to have that connection with my son, it's something that I need to do, right? So if you have multiple wives, that's something that you have to do. If you don't have the capacity to do that, then you shouldn't do it as a man. If you don't have the capacity to do that, you shouldn't do it as a woman. On either version of it, whether the woman has multiple husbands or the husband has multiple wives, you have to make sure you have the capacity. And then the women and the men that are also involved have to have the capacity and the maturity to be able to do it. Your books, your religion, they have flip-flopped based on who is in control. And because of that, that is why you have the mindset that you have. Because you were born in America. You was born under Christianity or Islam or Judaism or whatever religion that tells you how many wives you should have. That's why you believe what you believe. That's why your mind is saying that, well, I gotta have my own. I'm not here to share. I don't like sharing. That's only because you grew up in a society that says that. You grew up not seeing that. You grew up thinking that that was wrong. If you didn't, if you grew up in a polygamous relationship, polygamous family, your mind wouldn't be there, especially if it was done right, if it was done correctly, if there was balance, if your mother received the same love from the father that all the other mothers received, that you received the same love from that all the other children received from all the mothers, from the father, then you would not think that way. You would think it's perfectly fine, which is why it still exists. And you watch yourself, it's growing. That 20 to 30-year-old, early 40-year-old group in America, in Black America, are becoming more and more open to polygamy. And I dare say that we will see stronger family structures in those relationships than we will see in other ones. Now, I'm gonna tell you something funny before I go. One person said, one young lady, she said, hell, we might have to do polygamy because the amount of money it costs to pay rent, to pay mortgage, to get gas, to buy food, we may need 3-4 paychecks coming into the house. And I'll be damned if she may not be on to something. Because I thought about that. I thought about the fact that, you know, I paid for my house, I pay $1,800 a month. I pay $700 a month for my car and my motorcycle. I pay $800 a month for insurance. I don't pay a lot for food, but when I look at that and I say, well, if I had a wife, then a wife would be participating in some of the finances of the house. So that would take away some of my financial burden. If I had 2 wives, that would take a lot from my financial burdens. I currently have to run this cigar lounge and the popcorn shop all by myself. So if somebody could walk in right now, need something from the popcorn shop, I got to run my little happy ass 3 doors down and do that. Or get up early in the morning, got to make the popcorn. It would be great if I had a wife who was down there. It would be great if I had 2 wives who were down there handling that, and I could just focus on this, and then we could build this thing together. It'd be great to have those 2 wives, and if those 2 wives also had some other industry that they were working in, or they were building something, like they had an entrepreneurial spirit to build something, and they was working on that at the same time, it would be great, because then we would build an empire. And then whatever children are involved, my 3 kids who are adults, if they got children, and we will grow that. So it's something to think about. But I want y'all to think about that. And we're going to end this right here. So remember, you got to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable.